So the first thing that I tell everybody is I can't operate you out of a bad acquisition. There's no amount of good operation that I can do if you pay the wrong price for the building. So if you start off bad, the deal's gone. You might be able to make it work for a while and you might be able to survive for a while, but ultimately if you start off paying too much for a building, your deal is dead before it ever started, right? You might get some market conditions and things like that shift in your favor. I really emphasize make an honest pro forma. Don't shape your pro forma for what you want your deal to be. You know, I've seen so many people who are like, oh, well, I'll fudge this and I'll fudge that a little bit. And now you're trying to actually make your pro forma validate the deal for you. And that's a huge mistake. To another episode of Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm your guest, Corey Oliver, and with me, as always, your host, Tom and Mark.
El Natural, wow, first time.
First time, dude. Man, that was awesome.
This guy's got the coach's voice. Yeah. He wasn't lying about that.
I knew he was gonna have it, man. I'm telling you, that was awesome.
Man,
oh, man.
I've seen a lot of you lately.
Yeah,
we got live episodes. It's nice.
Yeah, we did the John Warren thing, and then I'm really excited. I know this will air way after we do it, but doing this NSBC event next week, like I'm excited. I started messing with some of the marketing today. Like that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and by the time this airs, we're gonna have our 5-year anniversary party in May. So I'm gonna bring it up now, even though we don't have it planned. Now we have to have it planned. This will air sometime in April, I believe.
I have the spot set up. If we do it in that big room in Elmhurst, we're at Modern Plate, most likely. Don't show up till you verify. Like the room, like I just have to get this guy details. Like he's excited to work with us. I'm excited to start promoting it. Like
5 years, baby. It's a big one.
5 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And I keep telling everyone the story about, in the beginning, you and me learned that 90% of podcasts don't make it past 10, and you and me agreed that we're just going to record 10 off the bat.
We did 11.
Yeah, we did
11. We wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
we got to beat the average.
So I think it's May 20th. May was the first. 20th or 21st?
I don't know. I don't want to start throwing dates out right now.
No, I'm saying that was the first 5 we dropped.
Got it.
So I think that was it. So I think we're going to end up doing it right around that time frame. So it'll be almost perfect.
Beautiful. All right. So enough about us. We had a great episode today. This is, we had Corey on 2 years ago, and it's nice to see someone just continue to grow and continue to do awesome new things, chase bigger deals.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting. I learned a bunch of stuff here as well too, and we talked about the system and how it's broken and ideas how to fix it. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, look at us. All right, housing provider tip of the week. What do we got?
All right, so housing provider tip of the week. Just in the last 10 years, you get a backup in your sewer. You used to send the rotter out. They send the 100-yard rotter out to the street. The last 10 years, they've come up with this idea around the hydrojetting. They pump that water into your pipes. They show up, they rot it for $250. They say they can't do it. Another $800. We'll throw a bunch of fast-moving water down there. I just want you to keep something in mind that potentially could destroy your 120-year-old pipes out in the front yard. It could potentially destroy stuff going all the way out to the street. I know we've gotten in issues where we've had hydrojetting. We don't necessarily disagree with it 100% of the time, but we try to go to that as a last resort when their big auger just can't get through what it needs to do and we have to do it. But we really try to avoid that. So keep that in mind as hydrojetting your sewer line in the front, making sure that's not your first go-to option every time. And I think they try to upsell that as well too. So be careful. There's certain plumbers that are doing that.
All right, that was a good one. All right, our guest today, had him on episode 176, I believe. I had it looked up and now I forgot. Founder and owner of Strength and Management, roughly about 700 units under management on the south and west sides.
I thought you were going to say roughly 7 feet.
Yeah, roughly 7 feet tall, barreling down on us.
Yeah. We've been looking up at him the whole time.
So without further ado, Corey Oliver, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
We had to hunt him down. So we asked 3 or 4 times, and then we ran into you at the Kaiser event. You're like, I'll talk here. I was like, no, we're still having you come to the underground. So appreciate you putting up with us and getting down here.
No, man, it was exciting. I got jammed up at the end of the year, and then I ended up getting COVID again at the beginning of the year. So it was.
God, that's so passe. That's done.
It was easy peasy, nothing big deal.
So, all right. Last time you were episode 176, we had you on about 2 years ago. At that time, you were just killing it in Lawndale, North Lawndale,
Has it been that long?
Englewood, roughly managing around 700 units. What has happened since then?
We kind of restructured a little bit, shrunk down, kind of tried to get more efficient. So we went through trying to figure out kind of what direction we wanted to go, where we wanted to be, And so, I mean, we're still about the same. Nothing as far as our size and stuff has really changed all too much. But, we've been really just kind of keeping our eye on the market, seeing which way things are going.
Shrunk down, get a little more efficient, go a little deeper there. Because that wasn't like an overnight thing. That was like, geez, we got to figure this out. That was probably months, if not multiple months of just like trying to figure out a better way of doing business.
Yeah, I mean, it really became a market analysis of the properties that we were managing, the locations that we were managing, trying to deal with some of the issues that were coming in the communities. Kind of dealing with some more of the fallouts from bad policy and COVID things and stuff like that. And so, and then we had owners who probably had overbought and their properties weren't going to perform, and we just couldn't go down with the ship like that. So, it was a lot of internal evaluation, and also we probably had some guys that we needed to let go and kind of get better and get better at what we do. And so, I mean, it's always our goal to try to deliver the best level service that we can, and then we also sold off a large chunk of our portfolio. So. We divested all of our West Side stuff, so we don't have anything in North Lawndale anymore. We've divested a lot of our South Side stuff at this point. We're just trying to reposition, see where the market is going. So we just actually listed a 12-unit in Inglewood that we're probably going to get rid of, and so we'll have maybe a handful of properties left at this point, and then we're going to reposition back into the market after we see, kind of what's coming down the pike. And I've had a lot of talks with people, and I've been part of a lot of receivership stuff. And so we see that there's stuff that's coming. And so we want to be, in a position to be able to kind of take advantage when that does come.
When we're evaluating it, we look at it as you got the resident, you got the building, and you got the owner. This is third-party management.
Yeah.
If two of those three suck,
yeah,
that's how we make the decision. You might have a rough tenant and the building's not that great, but we love the owner. That's sometimes the call, but if two of those three are bad, then we try to move on.
Yeah, I mean, we, historically we've always dealt in like the low end of the communities, because we wanted to try to be a supporting factor, trying to help bring stabilized housing. We've always been naturally occurring affordable housing, and so, I mean, but there's a lot of things that are occurring in that space right now. And I think there's a lot of volatility that we're seeing, and there's a lot of kind of cautious nervousness as among owners and local developers and things like that, where we're talking with a lot of our friends in the space, and they're like really hesitant about how everything is going. You're facing long lead times for evictions. Your subsidies are drying up. The market rate tenants are not as good. So we're all fighting over the handful of good market rate tenants that are going to live in these communities. And so you're carrying vacancies longer. You're cash flowing a little bit less because if you have a bad tenant and you miss, like we always, everybody misses on a tenant. They look good on paper and then they get in there and they're just a bust. That's an 8-month, $15,000 headache. And if they destroy the unit, now you got to also $10,000 in turnovers. So I mean that's a $25,000 potential miss.
Plus X amount in brain damage.
Well, we accept brain damage every day. That was kind of our exception that we chose to accept when we came into this space. But so I mean, I'm telling people right now, if you're looking at investing in the low income community, you should be running performance at 15, 20% vacancy collection loss, maybe 25%, depending on where you're at. Be very diligent. And I still see people overpaying for properties, and you're just like, okay, well, we're going to put that one on the clock and see how that one lasts. And, and so, I mean, we want everybody to be successful, but I mean, we think that there's a lot of reliance on subsidies, and, HUD is getting cut, so grant money, I mean, like the subsidy money that people are getting, the federal funding that these subsidies are getting is going away. The Low Income Housing Trust came out recently and said, if your unit goes vacant and it's a trust fund unit, we're going to cancel your voucher, and that's never been the case, so, so there's a lot of volatility that's happening that, we're trying to keep our eye on.
Yeah. What's a cap rate that would make you say, you know what, I will buy this? Like if you're in North Lawndale right now, like
10, 11.
Okay. So,
back where it should be.
And so what was it like 2 years ago? Like 8, 9? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and then you get to Ogden Commons and they try to compress to 7, I mean, I think North Lawndale should be a 10 cap 11 cap right now for it to make sense.
And when you're saying 10, 11, like a true 10 or 11 using the vacancy numbers, like true numbers.
Yes.
Yeah. So a broker 12, 13.
Who do we use those? Like, I thought those were just for decoration, you know? Yeah, like a broker 12 would be something that I would look
Broker
at.
12.
Yeah.
New term.
The other day, someone had a building in, I think it was Lawndale, and the pro forma for the broker was like 6% maintenance. He's like, man, no, I'm trying to be conservative. I'm at 8 right now. I'm like, no, man. Like,
Oh, jeez, no.
do you have an expense ratio you ever recommend for people?
If it's a boiler building, you should be probably 40 to 45% after vacancy and collection loss. You know, if you have all forced air and tenant paid, you know, I mean, you could probably go mid 30s, like 37, 38%. I mean, but here's
it's not
the
bad.
thing.
I'll just sorry to interrupt. Like on the overall operating expense, you're obviously more touch points, more maintenance, as we know when you're in these areas. Your taxes are a lot lower though, right? Like considered, you know, to Lakeview or whatever, proportionally.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even with that though, right? Like we've seen ginormous tax jumps. Because again, right, when we look at the assessor's office, we don't see their ability to properly understand because they're looking at the transactions, right? So if you got bloated markets in the transactional space, right, and then the assessor's trying to use that data to figure out how much the value is of your property, you know, you're still seeing a large amount of property taxes because your assessment is coming in extremely high because you have properties that are transacting around you that are probably transacting for higher than what they should.
They're gravitating towards pulling the 6 and 7 cap rate comps.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And then now you have also insurance companies are starting to evaluate low-income communities as if we're in like Tornado Alley or hurricane space, you know, or even now in California with the wildfires and everything like that. You know, so you're seeing, you know, 40, 50, 60% increases annually on your insurance. And then triannually, you might have a 70, 80% increase on your assessment, you know. And then all the while you're trying to control your rents and it becomes very complicated.
Yeah.
You know,
What's going on with rents over the last 2 years there?
I mean, they're going up, you know, we're seeing, but here's the thing, like, again, it's hard because you have families that, you know, that are on structured incomes and, you know, so
This is top of the line. Doesn't matter what market is. This is as much as I can afford.
Their
Yeah.
SSI didn't go up as much as the market.
Exactly, right? You know, and you care about these people, right? So, like, we don't typically raise rents every year, you know? Like, I have people, so I think when we last talked, we had our 60-unit building, and we talked about that.
Yep.
So we had inherited tenants that we kept in that building. So since the time we talked, I still haven't raised some of their rents, you know, because I have a 75-year-old grandmother who's on a fixed income who goes to work part-time every day. You know, like, what am I going to do? I mean,
Well, the alternative too is then going and putting 25,000 into the unit, and then put yourself out there, risk for whoever you get next. I was telling someone the other day. I said, listen.
You dance with the devil, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It was along that lines, but like you get it, you start. That's how you talk yourself out of raising the rent for those scenarios.
Yeah, you know, and so, but here we are now. Like, I just was talking to my staff. I'm like, we have to look at the entire portfolio, and we've got to determine, you know, can we go up, you know, $50, $25, $75 for individuals? I mean, because we have some people in one bedrooms where the new tenants who are moving in are paying $1,100, $1,200 a month for a one bedroom, and some of the existing tenants are still paying $800, $850. You know, and we're like, oh, you know, we got to do something because property taxes went up, operations have gone up, cost of running the building gone up, gas, water, sewer, all of that's gone up, you know, garbage, everything is going up, you know? And so it's like, now we're trying to have these conversations with them like, look, you know, we haven't raised your rent in a few years. We're going to have to go up $50, $75, you know, but they're still on fixed income, structured income, whatever, you know, because we deal with, and we have some people who have a balance between aid and they make a little bit, you know, some of your Section 8 tenants, things like that, you know, where we tell them right away, go recert, right? Go income recertify. We're going to go ask Section 8 for an increase. Go recertify your income to see if your portion is still going to stay the same, you know. And so we try to be as supportive as possible, you know, but I mean, some of our buildings are extremely complicated. and they have extremely difficult populations. They're over subsidized as far as the tenants are concerned. So you're dealing with human elements as well as the physical elements of the building, as well as the financial elements. And, so, I mean, you always feel like you got like a ton of spinning plates. And we're the first line of contact, so we're the ones that the tenants are calling to complain and argue with. And, and we're like, we're doing the best we can, but you're paying your rent, but the three people next to you aren't paying their rent. And you want us to do all of this stuff. And, we're doing what we can. And, our owners are sitting there like, ooh, I got to pay the mortgage this month. And, so, I mean, there's a lot of tap dancing and trying to keep everybody happy as best as we can. But, I mean, at some point in time, I think the house of cards eventually falls.
Do you request increases for CHA tenants whenever you have the chance, or is there a strategy
after inspection, right?
Yeah. We usually try with CHA. We try to do it once a year. That's usually what they allow. HUD.
Because sometimes I ask the question more because sometimes the tenants get jammed with that increase, and is that why you say go?
Well, here's the thing. The great thing about CHA is CHA will never allow them to pay more than 30%, of their income. And so typically, if you have a situation where a tenant is concerned about it, and honestly, we tell them to go, if your income has materially changed in any way, go recertify, right? Like, don't sit here and toil and struggle.
Especially for works.
Yeah.
That's mostly for works.
Yeah, because
you don't do it the other way.
Yeah, because CHA will go to 100% if you've materially gone to a really bad position, So CHA will cover you, but you got to work with them. You got to communicate with them. And sometimes, especially with this tenant population, they just go catatonic. They go MIA. You can't catch them, And we're like, look, you can't do that. I know I think we've all been broke enough where we avoided the debt collector call, but with CHA, that's your partner, go tell them what's going on. Go talk to them, recertify your income. They'll adjust it so that you're not paying any more than 30% of your gross, and go from there. But yeah, I mean, and then typically the new HUD FMR comes out, which is the fair market rates that HUD sets based on zip code. That comes out like end of third, beginning of fourth quarter for the next year. And so then we can start looking at and seeing, okay, who's where, because sometimes we get really good favorable determinations from CHA and we're just like, man, we can kind of rock with this one for a little bit. There's not going to be any material change as far as increasing rent. So, I'm not going to HUD I'm not going to CHA to try to get $10, $20, but, if we're like, okay, Miss Tenant XYZ, we haven't done her in a couple of years. She's at $200 below the current FMR. Let's go see what CHA will do. And then we'll push like that. So, I mean, it kind of is situational, but I mean, having an active relationship with CHA so you can understand, because CHA doesn't quite go dollar for dollar on HUD because they have more current market data, and so they will use what they have at their disposal as well. But it's always good, if you pull up the HUD FMR for a 1-bedroom in your zip code and you're $200 below that, and you got a CHA voucher, it's probably good, to go in and say, can you give me a bump?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along the lines of CHA, talk to us about just managing that. How is that different than a building that would be, market for our listeners who haven't experienced both sides of it?
Yeah. So, ultimately you have it on the tenant side, right? So the tenant population is different. Not all CHA tenants work or work regularly. So you end up with a little bit more potentially you have a little bit more wear and tear on the unit because, when you have a market rate tenant who's got a job and, they're getting up, they're out of the house, and for the next 8 to potentially 10 hours, they're gone. So you have nothing happening.
3 times as much time they spend in the unit.
Exactly, right? So, and then, with the CHA tenant, they may work part-time or they may not work at all. So, they get up, they're using water, they're using the stove, they're using the power, they're using the unit, the bathrooms and things like that. So you just end up, just think about it, right? Like if you're throughout a day, you go to the bathroom 4 or 5 times a day, right? And you don't leave your house, that's turning on the faucet, flushing the toilet, doing this, doing that, putting stuff down your drain. That's just more usage on that particular space. And so you're going to have higher levels of wear and tear. You're going to have higher levels of normal operational use, your stove and fridge and all that stuff, So, it just creates a little bit higher level of operating cost, and that doesn't even mean you're going to have a bad tenant. you know, like you could have the best tenant in the world. It just is what it is. And, you know, and so with a market rate tenant, you know, typically, you know, they're getting up, they're going to work because they got bills to pay and they got to take care of business. And then they might come home or they might go hang out with their friends, or because, you know, presumably they got more expendable income, you know, so they're spending more time out and about servicing local businesses and things like that. You know, and then depending on your unit size, right? Like, so if you have a CHA tenant who has a 3-bedroom vouchers, that means that, you know, you got kids, presumably all of them under 18.
Potentially 4 in that scenario.
Well, yeah, because CHA will allow you to do, I think, 2 people per room, you know? So, I mean, you could have several kids in the house, you know, and then kids create wear and tear and things like that, you know? So, I mean, there's a lot of things that looking at it, you know, you just got to measure and determine, okay, how do we work with this? How do we price this? How do we do this? How do we do that? You know, because it's obviously it's doable, you know, because, and then because that's the tenant side. And then on the actual operation side, right, you got, last that I saw, CHA's move in. So from the time that they receive the RTA packet, which is the move-in papers, to approval is about 75 days. So,
That's long.
yeah, it's crazy, right? So, and that's if you pass your inspection on the first time.
Yeah, you miss that. It's another 2 weeks or whatever.
Right. You know, so if you get in there and you got, you know, chip and paint, or you're missing a screen, or, you know, I mean, it could be something very nominal and you're just like, I can take care of it like this second, like just, you know, they're like, no, we're going to have to schedule a reinspection. And then they come back out in like 2 weeks, and then you pass. And then, you know, and then annually you have your inspections. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens because I don't know if you guys saw what, you know, kind of what's going down with HUD and the cuts and things like that. They just cut Section 4, which is like a low-income housing program that, like, you know, some of these other providers use. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with CHA, to see what their budget goes, because if it gets chopped, inspections might get chopped, you know, so.
Yes. Every other year inspection.
Wasn't that COVID?
Yeah,
Like
they
that-
kind of did something like that with COVID.
Yeah.
I remember like FaceTiming.
Yeah, I mean, it may, you're right, and that'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. Are you self-certifying? Are you sending a video to somebody somewhere or something, you know? So it'll be interesting to see if you're no longer having to go. You're just getting a notice saying, hey, your annual inspection is due. You need to self-certify by blah, blah, blah. And then
I was talking to someone the other day, and I get the question all the time, like, man, you think they're going to get rid of Section 8? I'm like, yeah.
they're not getting rid of Section 8.
First of all, like, Trump's like entire network is like landlords. Like, they own more properties than everyone we know put together. Like, so they're not going to do it themselves. But 2, it doesn't mean it comes right from the tenant's pocket. I mean,
Right.
we all know they're going through everything right now with the bloat in government. Like,
Yeah.
there's probably tons of bloat when it comes to CHA or the different housing authorities that they could like have half the inspectors or and go that route. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was an article that just came out even recently that was talking about CHA had, over the last 2 years, didn't collect $10.4 million in rent from their tenants.
yeah,
You know,
they say they have that in CHA. They have that whole other side where the stuff they manage. So that's just,
I mean,
that's-
and then-
that's a disaster.
I mean, because they're
That's a
sitting there
disaster.
with, I think, 2,500 units that are non-performing and unlivable.
it's so sad. 290 in Western right there. Like,
Yeah.
they rebuilt all of that on that the northwest corner there, and man, half that stuff is they did. Some of it's privately owned, and some of it's CHA ran.
Yeah.
The properties are run by CHA. It's just
Well, they're working on it. So I know they just hired a new third-party manager who just picked up about 1,200 of their units in their portfolio. So they are working. I know they're looking for a new CEO right now, which will kind of hopefully give them a better vision and a better direction and a pathway forward. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's very hard. You know, it kind of feels disingenuous to me when you have your politicians who are sitting there pounding their gavel on affordable housing, but their housing, their housing company that they own and operate or that they are responsible for
It's horrendous.
is not collecting rents and
These units empty for a decade.
are sitting, you know,
Yeah.
vacant and dilapidated, and they're not doing anything about it, right? Like, so it would be one thing to me if your portfolio was pristine and operating and killing it, and you're still sitting here saying, okay, we need more units. And so then I'd be like, okay, no doubt, let's figure something out. But you're sitting there with this dilapidated portfolio, and you got these tenants, and you're not holding these people accountable. Because here's the asinine thing about the $10.4 million in non-collected rents is just like what we talked about. They went in, they looked at all of your income, and they determined you can afford to pay this. And you're just not paying it, and they're not doing anything about it, and you have a 10-year wait list of other families that could be using that voucher.
Well, that's the demand is there. There's people dying to get into the program.
Yeah, but you're not getting rid of the bad performers, right? And so, and all they had to do, if they couldn't afford to pay it, all they had to do was go recertify their income, and they had to take the personal accountability to go and take care of their business, and they're not doing it. And now you're going to be in a position where you have to evict them. But then what? You're still going to give them a voucher? Like, what are we talking about? You got all of these families who could potentially take advantage of that voucher and do what they're supposed to do with it. If you just say, okay, we tried, you didn't do your spot, I got to take this from you, and I'm going to give it to this person over here.
Was that just an audition for the CEO role?
Yeah, do it. Start campaigning here.
I don't want those problems.
Is that what the sport jacket's on?
Right, I know. Okay, so Mr. Mayor, no, I do not want those problems. But this is my community, so I want to see solutions. I want to see, we want to see people. We've been doing this a long time, you guys and I, and we're in the business of trying to house people, and we want people to have homes, and we all have different strategies in which we try to do it. But at the end of the day, we have the same goal of being solid, upright, forthcoming housing providers, and that's what we're trying to do.
We're 93 days from if we have a CHA tenant move out to a CHA tenant move in. That's our longest. We track it 4 different ways. It's market to market, market to CHA, CHA to market, and then CHA to CHA. And that's our longest time frame as far as turnover goes.
That's crazy.
That's
Turnover's
a lot of days.
Turnover's a little heavier. The paperwork on the other side, it's the other thing that we run into is it's like they don't move out on the 31st. It's like all of a sudden, we got an email a couple of days ago. Yeah, I moved out on the 28th. It's like, dude, it's the 4th, man, and you haven't returned any of our texts.
Right, and call us. I didn't leave no keys, and I left the keys on the counter with the door open.
Yeah. 4 days ago. Yeah.
Now I got squatters. Now So that part does get a little frustrating.
Off 4 or 5 days.
Of course. Yeah, because you haven't cleaned the. Because 9 times out of 10 they don't take everything, right? So you got to clean out the units before you can even start the turnover process. So and we've also had a situation where we've had a tenant, a CHA tenant who was supposed to be moving out, and then so we're like, okay, we're trying to get in there, and we go, and they're still there because the place that they're going failed their inspection, and then nobody notified us. And so because we get the letter from CHA saying your tenant is going to move out on this day and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, great. So you go into the unit thinking that the tenant's not going to be there, and they're in there. And you're like, what do you do? Oh, well, my owner, my new unit failed inspection, and you weren't going to call us? You weren't going to say nothing? So, yeah, that part is a little frustrating.
Yeah. I think, so Jeff's had some, in the Northwest side, you usually get a higher or same as market for rent. What their number is. What's goofy to me though is you accept a tenant, you go through all the RTA paperwork, the inspection, all the wait time, and then they give you the rent amount. Right? It's at the end. It's this big reveal of what we're gonna give you.
And you're like, ugh. But here's the thing.
And at that point you're pot committed, even if it's a lower number, it's all right, well.
Nah, man, tell them no.
You absolutely can, but it's
But now you're back. It's you rather take the $100 less and start that process over. Now Cook County's doing opposite now. Though.
Well, hold on a second though. You can go back and negotiate the rent with them to some degree, and they may come back. It used to be that you could go submit comps into the portal, and then they would go back in and do a whole new rent calculation. But there's still a little bit of wiggle room. We've been able to pull them up a couple times, a couple $100 here and there. Sometimes they come back and say, this is kind of our best and final. And then you make that decision of, if I'm going to do it or not. But I would say if I'm in an area that's a mobility zone, I'd rent out this. I would at least dedicate 20% or 30% of my units in my building for Section 8 because Section 8 pays 30% more.
And mobility is moving fast. I feel that process
moves faster. You get the one, if it's your first time in there, you get the 1 month rent up front as well. So it almost covers. Yeah. You get whatever the rent. Let's say the rent's $2,200 a month.
Yeah.
You get that bonus. The first month you get $4,400.
Yeah.
So it almost covers you for that 30 days of waiting, if that makes sense. You're almost made whole.
Cook County's doing it opposite now. So before they go to the inspection, they make sure you're good with the number.
Really?
Yeah. So that's kind of a cool thing that it definitely, obviously we're not supposed to discriminate against, but it helps us be more excited at least about the opportunity versus everyone just kind of holds their breath
when is this going to come back at? I'm doing all these repairs for let's say you have to do an extra punch list. It's all right, I'm doing all this. is this even going to work out? Like, are we just spinning our wheels?
And for
here?
us
Yeah.
with a scattered site third party, the guy might own only 1 or 2 units, so he's never even had a Section 8 tenant. So you got to explain the whole process to him, make him understand, remind him he can't not do this
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
And then it comes back whack. So it's like, oh man, so it's such a roller coaster. But that's Cook County, man. I wish CHA would adopt that mindset, because that would cut out a lot of BS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that helps. I mean, I think, there's also a lot of other, like, what I like to call like the micro subsidies, like your thresholds and your housing opportunity for women and things like that, that will come in, and they move a lot faster, And so what's the great, those are kind of, so like a CHA voucher can be anywhere from a 15-year voucher to perpetuity, right? Whereas like some of these smaller ones, you can get a 1-year lease, and then you can get maybe a couple years renewable, but their goal is to try to get them onto the emergency housing voucher, which I think is a 15 or 25-year voucher, so then you can get the benefit of having this subsidy that's there and paying rent until you get done with the transition in place process with CHA, and so then you can get some rents from there. And so, but then you're dealing kind of with a tougher population so you got to kind of have also the bandwidth to kind of do that part of it too. But, I think that there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of options to try to figure out, how to bridge some of your gaps. But it does become difficult.
What I was told and what I experienced, you see a lot of voucher holders, people trying to get on the list, they move away because the short list is shorter.
Yeah.
And they could get on the list, and they might move. You'll see a lot of people move to Des Moines or something like that, or Quad Cities. So when they transfer back, so if you ever, this is more of a tip, I guess, if you see the voucher number start with a T, that means they're a transfer.
So they were a transfer?
And usually it takes a little longer
with those
for their paperwork up front for us. That's what we learned.
We had a tenant who was Cook County, because even if you're a Cook County voucher holder, you have to port into CHA to come. Like, we had a tenant, she was on, like, it took her, Cook County paid for her rent for 5 years because she couldn't ever get ported into CHA. And she was living, it was one of our Lawndale tenants, and for like forever, she just could never get ported over to CHA. And so she was hack for almost the entire time she was a tenant.
Riverdale has both. So you could be a CHA tenant or a Cook County tenant.
Oh, really?
Riverdale, yeah. That's just make it more confusing.
I refuse to go to Riverdale.
Well, before we go on, let's do now. One thing that I learned recently, it blew me away, was I thought like Catholic Charities, all the money came from the Catholic Church. Like that, they're heavily government funded. I just heard that. Like, am I the only guy that didn't know that? Were you guys aware of that?
Well, I'm sure they at some point they were only Catholic funded, but
that's kind of BS, dude.
Well, they
it's like, man.
Well, I think the Catholic Charities is that the people who are working there. So, but we work a lot with Catholic Charities, but they've been heavily HUD funded for a while.
Yeah. So both
me.
this one's on you.
It's just like another level of the church laying me down. It's like,
all right, so you guys have both done third-party management in these high-touch neighborhoods. What that person who's from California sees this looks great on a spreadsheet. Oh my God, I'm close to downtown. What are some of those conversations you're having? Because you want them to be successful. You don't want to just be like, oh my God, this is scary, don't do it.
Yeah. You
also want to be realistic about numbers.
Yeah.
So talk to us about just those conversations, right? You got to balance the line of like, hey, I'm going to put up, you're their line of defense here, so you need to be real with them, but you also want to make sure they're successful.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is helping them understand the market, right? Because I'm going to go to the other coast with New York, and so we've managed for a lot of New York guys, and they're used to seeing.
they're cocky.
Well, they're extremely arrogant, but
you guys just want to crap on New York for 5 minutes. I'm totally fine.
But they're used to seeing like a 5 and a 6 cap, or maybe even sometimes a 4 cap in a heavy touch neighborhood, right? So they come to Chicago and they start seeing 6, 7, 8, 9, and they're like, ooh, gravy, and you're just like, no, like this building is not a 7.5 cap. And they're like, well, it's okay. I can make it work. And
that's your job to make it that, right? Like
right.
They're like, whoa.
So the first thing that I tell everybody is I can't operate you out of a bad acquisition, right? There's no amount of good operation that I can do if you pay the wrong price for the building.
That's just a great line.
Yeah.
That's just, whether it's third party or your own self, you can't operate yourself out of it.
Right. So if you start off bad, the deal's gone. Right. And so you might be able to make it work for a while, and you might be able to survive for a while. But ultimately, if you start off but paying too much for a building, your deal is dead before it ever started.
It just means luck at that point. That's all.
Yeah, the market at your back.
No one moves out.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, right? You might get some market conditions and things like that shift in your favor. You can refi, and here's the thing. Half of these guys, they're coming in, refining, pulling their cash out, and then whatever happens, they're just kind of like, but like for like small mom and pop investors, I really emphasize, make an honest pro forma, right? Like don't shape your pro forma for what you want your deal to be. Look at the market, understand what the numbers are saying, and then let your pro forma tell you if this is a good deal or not. I've seen so many people who are like, oh, well, I'll fudge this and I'll fudge that a little bit. And, and now you're trying to actually make your pro forma validate the deal for you. And that's a huge mistake, because then you get into it and you realize the real world slaps you in the face, and you can't fudge this and you can't fudge that. And your water bill is what the 12 months due diligence said the water bill was going to be. And you can't make it any cheaper because you didn't tear out the systems to put in a more efficient, boiler or more efficient water distribution or whatever. And so now you're sitting there like, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay for my mortgage this month? And then also do due diligence. There's been so many people who live out of state who come and try to buy in Chicago, and they don't come and touch the building. Walk the units, walk the boiler rooms, check the foundations, check the structure, check the masonry, do what you're supposed to do as an investor. Like this is one thing, like people ask me all the time. It's like, well, would you ever look at investing outside of Chicago? It's like, I don't know, because I have to touch it. Like I have to get there. I have to walk it. I got to know, what exactly I'm buying. I got to understand the market. And so it makes me very apprehensive about going somewhere else and investing somewhere else, is because like as an operator, and this is kind of like the curse of the operator, right? Like you're in your boilers, you're in your units, you're touching your tenants, you understand the ecosystem of your building. So at the very least, if you're coming from California or coming from New York or somewhere else, when you're under your due diligence time period, plan on being here for a week, right? Because then that way you can come, you can touch the building, you can go there at night, you can go there in the morning, you can go there at random parts of the day to see how the building is, how people live there, right? Like I don't even go into the building. Like I would just go park my car, turn on some music, and I'll just kind of sit there for a couple hours and just see, do I got loiterers? Do I got this? Do I got that? Now at this point, I don't really have to do it anymore because, we know the communities and things like that. But I mean, like if I was out of town, like that's what I would do, right? I'm going to get my hotel room and I'm about to post up and we about to see what's really going on. The biggest times are from dusk to dawn, go see, like, as it starts to get dark, what is the eco like how are everybody living and how's people moving around the building? And then, at the darkest parts of the night, so that means you might have to pop over there at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. Is it quiet? Is it, what's going on? And then, around work time, are people getting up, leaving to go to work, and so, and then like when people are coming home from school and coming home from work, those are going to be like the time periods you want to know. That's going to let you know, okay, how is the world around this particular building? What other problems am I going to have? And then that's after, you went to look, is my boiler 15 years old? Don't let them tell you, oh, it's 15 years old, but we PM it boiler, it doesn't matter. Boilers have a lifespan, like you could PM them jokers every year, but every year after about year 12 or 13, the cost to maintain that boiler is going to go up exponentially, right? Because it's going to use less water. It's going to use more water to do the same functions. It's going to, parts are going to die, pieces on the inside, like, even for the furnaces, right? Like, don't let somebody sit there and tell you, oh, the furnaces are fantastic. They're 12 years old. Nah, bro, like, we're going to have to capital expense those. Like,
years, yeah, South side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, usually like 10 at this point, because they don't make stuff like they used to. You used to be able to rock a boiler and a furnace for 20 years, but... so now you're like, okay, this becomes a CapEx expense. This becomes a CapEx expense. Go up to the third floor, walk around the third floor. Do you see watermarks? Get on your roof. If it's a flat roof, don't be scared. Get on your roof, walk the roof. Check your, do you have, do the roof membranes go up your parapet wall? Do you got your termination bars? Check your capstones. Is anything loose? Do I see any water penetration points? I mean, it takes like 2 hours to walk a building when you're trying to buy it, but if you're going to put $2 million into a development or into a project, take the time to make sure you're getting what you think you're getting, because once you own it, that problem is yours.
No mulligans, baby.
Right. You can't go back and be like, oh, you sold me. Nah, bro. Like I gave you 2 weeks to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
I think the thing we see often, we do a lot of smaller size units, single family up to, call it 6 flats. People are buying it from the coast. They might not come out there, but what they don't realize is they buy it to be armchair, turnkey, whatever. And it's like, because of all these scenarios that happen, because you're going to have larger turnovers, because you're going to have 4 mattresses show up next to your Flood Brothers dumpster, and it's going to cost $600. Like, these are all the things that you're going to be reaching out to calling me. I'm going to be calling you. You're going to have a guy that's going to crash through your gate. Like, and we're going to have to figure out if that insurance covers that or not. Now all of a sudden, like, oh man, I thought this was gonna be turnkey, and it's like, we can do it all, but you're not gonna want to write that check either.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's a price for it.
I gotta keep you involved here because I gotta let you know what I'm doing, the money we're spending, and they eventually get just like the stress that they pay us to carry. They're now taking it, and they're like, "Geez, it's not worth it. I'll just go put it back in the market." Like, so we see people get worn out by. It's just you have to engage with them. It's not like buying a single family home in a Class A suburb that you might not have a work order for 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2 flats and 3 flats, our 2s and 3s typically are a lot lower touch than like a 25 unit building. But yeah, I mean, it's, you got, for example, we have an owner now who bought I think it's like a 6 or 7 unit building. We were managing it before for the previous owner. We're managing it now for the new owner. And they're like, yeah, we just want to do janitorial and sanitation every other week. Like, you're on Jeffrey, girl. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're going to have you're going to have like a pile of garbage just sitting in your front lawn. Streets and Sands are going to come and, I mean, like, and it all sounds good, right? But like, when you get that first $500, $600 per violation, Streets and Sands violation, now you're looking down the barrel of a $1,500. You're looking at me like, can you fix? Like, no, like I told you like what the schedule was, and you said you didn't want to do it. So, and so there's a lot of that kind of hard love that we do sometimes, with our owners to let them know, like, look, this is not a good idea, and then they're like, they push. I mean, it's their building. We'll do whatever you want us to do. But understand, like, there's going to be repercussions because of it, because I'm telling you what it takes. And if you don't want to pay for what it takes, then you overpaid for your building.
And that weekly cleanup was not in their pro forma either. So
I know, which is insane.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Because the house that they're 1031ing out of Washington State didn't require that, and they just don't even understand.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you have to do.
Don't even get me started on 1031s.
Going back to due diligence, one thing to pull out, regardless if you're in a high touch area or not, if you can only see certain, and this Jeff does the same thing. If you can only see certain units, request to see the top ones.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at 20 unit courtyard building, like, hey, I'll get you into 4 or 5 units. Like,
Yeah.
see the top ones, because then you can see any of the roof problems coming, any of the leaks there. Like,
yeah. And I always talk to the tenants, because the tenants will
talk
come
to
out
them.
snitching hardcore. Like, I called the management company, they don't ever come out. Blah. Like, hold on, is everything good or not? Right? Like, when you turn your hot water on, does it get hot? But they'll walk you around the units. Oh, here's our mouse holes. Here's our this. Here's our that. So I mean, I'd say don't be afraid to talk to tenants.
I'll be like, hey, the seller told me there's very low maintenance in your specific unit. Like, is there like I'll tell him. Like, get them, oh, he told you that? Like, maybe I'm confusing units. Like, tell me what you know. Like,
yeah, I know, right? Like, tell me what's going on. Because I mean, honestly, so yeah, it is definitely very much like that for sure.
well, all right, you're chasing a pretty big development here. Are we allowed to talk about this?
Yeah. So we were awarded city funds on Monday to do. So let me kind of back up. I was part of the Next Generation program of developers, a program that was created by IDA to help emerging developers try to get into the low-income housing tax credit space. So ultimately, the low-income housing tax credit is a program that is federally funded through the IRS. Well, I guess it's regulated through the IRS. Anyways, that delivers tax credits to help the development of affordable housing units in different municipalities across the country, right? So our housing financial agency that distributes the tax credits is IDA, and then the city of Chicago also has a cutout of IDA's portion, right? And so I went through the Next Gen Developer program to learn how to do tax credit deals, because I've never done them. I've always been naturally occurring affordable housing. We always complain about them because they're $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a unit. So, so I went through the program to kind of build a concept of a project that I wanted to do at my current location that we own for our company. And we were acquiring the land to the north of us, which was a couple vacant lots and then a commercial strip mall. And so we were kind of like, let's take a look at this. We're going through this program.
So real quick though, because we talked a little bit about this. You bought that not knowing if any of this tax credit would come through, correct?
Right. So our mindset was, we'll operate the laundromat and the convenience store regardless, and we'll kind of figure out what we'll do with the vacant land or whatever. But we really liked the laundromat. We bought the business and the space and everything like that. So we really like the idea of having a laundromat. And it's a large space. I mean, it's not like a small one. It's like 50 pockets of dryers and 50 washers. It's going to be, and we just renovated it. So we got the new machines coming. We're hoping to open it up here in April.
What neighborhood?
This is in Woodlawn.
Woodlawn?
Yeah. So we're south of 63rd. So there's a lot of development happening 63rd and north of 63rd and kind of like right on that 63rd Street corridor. So we're like, how do we pull development south of 63rd Street? Because University of Chicago stopped at 63rd. Preservation of Affordable Housing stopped at 63rd. Leon DL3 did their developments right on 63rd, and so we're like, okay, we got to bring this south. And so I get to close to the end of the program and they're like, why don't you submit? So I was working with a syndicator who's a friend of ours. He's like, you should submit your PPA. So the PPA is a preliminary application that you submit to determine if you even have enough pieces of your plan to make a full application. And so
It's like a promise ring.
Well, yeah. It's not even that. It's like, you got the qualities for us to date, but we're not dating yet. But
This is the note in class.
This is the, you qualify to ask me out on the first date.
All right.
So, and then you have to do these things in order for us to go out, And so we submitted our PPA in October, and in December we found out that we were invited to go out on the first date, and so we had from December till yesterday to get our application in. Well, the first thing that I did was I went to the city and I said, my project is going to need soft funds from the city. Will you give me soft funds?
And what is the proposed project?
So the proposed project is a 48 unit mixed use development with it's a little over 11,000 in commercial. We're going to bring in an urgent care facility. We're going to rebuild the laundromat completely. We're looking at trying to bring in Woodlawn Chamber of Commerce to house them at the location, and then have some other businesses and things like that that'll be there on the main floor. And then on floors 2 through 4 will be a mixture of 1, 2s, and 3s affordable housing units for the neighborhood of Woodlawn to use. And then there'll be amenity spaces and like a workout room and things like that for the tenants. And then we'll have it'll be stilted up. We got parking underneath it. It's a pretty slick little thing. I've never actually done anything like this before. So I've been pretty stoked about it. And so, but it's crazy. We're looking at, potential budget of around $37 million, for us again, right now, here we go back again as naturally occurring. We're like, whoa, how does that work?
Yeah. Again, you're at $800 a door or whatever.
Yeah. It comes out to $800,000 a unit. And you're like, but the alternative is you sit with vacant land, you sit with no development, you sit with nothing, So, is there probably something more efficient that can be created in the middle? Yes. But as of right now, it doesn't exist for us to do. And so the alternative is nothing occurs. And so, and we don't like that alternative. And so that was kind of the decision. We were like, okay, we're going to do this. But there's a lot of money that has to go to outlay things for the application. You need phase ones, you need market studies, you need you got to have architectural drawings, so there's a lot of things that go. And so what ended up happening for us was we had asked the city for money, and then we didn't hear anything. And we were waiting because we're like, the city's funding was going to be about 40% of our budget that we were asking for. And we were just like, man, it's really hard for us as smaller developers to commit to, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of pre-development costs. And we don't know how, when, or if we're even going to get that money back. And so we kind of drug our feet. And then we finally just got to a point where we were just like, okay, we're not going to get this, so we'll go back to the drawing board. We may resubmit for the tax credits again next fall or whatever, or maybe do the city round this summer if they have it. And so that's kind of where our mindset was. And then Monday night of this week, we got our letter from the city saying, congratulations, you have, we love your project. We're going to, give you soft funds, et cetera. And so we're like, oh gosh, can we get this thing submitted in 3 days? The checklist, like I was telling you, is 25 pages long just for the checklist, And so we're like, so I talked to my consultant who was my coach through the program. I reached out to one of our partners and our architects, and we were like, are we going to try to do this? And everybody's like, let's try to figure this out. If you're willing to put in the time and effort, then let's figure this out. And so pretty much on Tuesday, I've been in a black hole, just trying to hammer things out, get trying to build the community study stuff. I've been talking with architects. I'm on my third my general contractor went ghost. The second general contractor I was trying to get, we were talking to them and they went ghost. And so then I got a third general contractor involved yesterday, and they hammered through some stuff to get us the stuff that we needed. My architects hammered through things. My wife has been like a rock star, taking care of the kids. Cause it was 8:30 at the office. I got home at midnight, 11, for the last 3 days. And so, super, super shout out to my wife for holding it down for me, because there's no way, it's been I literally worked 40 hours in the last 3 days trying to get this together. My coach, Kamina Brooks, she's been, rock star. So we got submitted yesterday, and now we don't know what's going to happen. The 9% tax credit is competitive. And so our application wasn't perfect because we did drag our feet on some of the elements. And so we had to kind of put some stuff together to try to, make it work. So we'll see what happens. We're hoping we'll get an opportunity to kind of deal with some of the deficiencies that may be a part of the application. But at the end of the day, whatever ends up happening, we're okay with it. We may end up submitting again. We may try to do it again. But it's been crazy eye-opening for me as what it goes into take to try to get one of those projects off the ground. You got mad respect for, the guys at 43 Green for what they've done to try to get that project, to the finish line. I think they're on their phase 2 now. DL3, what he does to get his projects going, the kind of work that you got. It's crazy. It's different, and then even if you get awarded, right, it's not, okay, we go put shovels in the ground, now you got to go and actually it's going to take so they're going to announce awards, I think in June, which means that I might be able to close the deal by, I don't know, maybe 8, 10, 12 months later. And then we get shovels in the ground, 18 months for construction. Then we have a stabilization period. So, the building probably won't be even, really stabilized and operating until maybe 28, 29. Sometimes.
This affordable development is not like a project. It's a phase of your life.
Yeah.
Each one, you'll look back and you'll remember that as a phase of your life, not even a project. It's crazy how much time.
Because ultimately, if you get awarded, this could be the next 4 years of your life just to get through development. And then you have 15 years of operations with another potential 15 years after that of operations, depending on how everything goes, So, a tax credit deal is almost a career long commitment,
That's awesome, man. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Freaking awesome.
We'll see how it goes, but ultimately, it's been.
You're learning so much.
So much.
Like no matter where this goes, there's a huge amount of a win no matter what they got this far.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It also helps me see, how could we potentially fix this, right? By going through this process, how could we, and it's not even necessarily, I guess, I wouldn't say fix it. How could we add another component for a no investor, right? That could potentially take this and instead of doing, and maybe do a ground up development, but even we have so many vacant and boarded up buildings. How could we take this when we're looking at an acquisition price of $40,000 a unit, and we're looking at rehab costs at $70,000, $80,000 a unit, but we're only looking at operating sustainability costs at about $60,000, $65,000 a unit. Yeah. What could we create along with these institutions to help cover a $60,000 delta? And so their skin in the game is now only $60,000 compared to having to cover a whole $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. Because here's the thing: the cost of things aren't getting cheaper, so it's not going to be very long before a low-income housing tax credit development deal in Chicago is $1 million a unit. There are already some in California that are $1 million a unit, So, we can't sit here and say that they're building skyscrapers downtown for $450,000 a unit?
Yeah.
That this is the best way to do it.
Yeah,
You
it's
know.
nuts.
So is that a pitch to be CEO of IDA?
First off, Kristen Faust, I think you're amazing. I do not want your job. I love Kristen. She's awesome. She's doing a fantastic job with the IDA, and it's not even her fault. Like it's got to be a different way to look at real estate, you know. And I think that's what I think that's what we're hoping to try to figure out, you know, how to get into being a part of those conversations.
Yeah. Is it just as simple as like going back to that example, like where it's 40 grand to buy, it's 80 grand to rehab, but the after value is only 60, 70. Is it as simple as the city, instead of all these subsidy, just the subsidy goes towards like their group of, they hire contractors to go do this and it doesn't get hit?
It's a privatization of the.
Yes, and without it being bloated and like we need unit, like without bloating, just to go to a normal guy who's going to do that unit anyways and being like, hey, like we're going to pay the 8, we're going to pay whatever.
It's not quite that simple because there has to be accountability, right? Like if you're going to take any type of public funding, you know, there has to be accountability associated to it. And so if the city is going to, I mean, like even with TIFs, right? Like the responsibility was, okay, we're going to put a deed restriction on here to force you to make sure that it's, affordable. You got to submit your annual, rent certifications, things like that. You got to keep X amount of, depending on how much money you need, you got to keep X amount of units affordable. And this is the thing that people need to understand. Just because you say affordable housing does not mean that you're talking about extreme or low income families, right? I'm talking about affordable for anybody.
Dude, the affordable number is really high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we did it for the asset program where you get the tax reduction and like a 2-bed, it's like, I don't know, it's like 70 grand a year or something. Yeah. Like it was maybe not that high, but it was a big number for the income. I was like, oh,
Yeah. I mean, we are.
It's not 25 grand, I guess is my point.
Market rates rent in the communities that we service are 60% of AMI already, right? So if you're going to sit here and tell me that I have to keep my rents affordable, I'm like, well, the market already dictates that I keep my rents affordable, and I can operate. So if I can stay 80% of AMI or less, and you guys will give me this delta so that I can create this, then, I will 100% do 100% of my units. And I don't need CHA. I don't need vouchers. I don't need anything. I will rent to mom and pop working individual because they can afford the units and it'll make my performance. It'll work just the same for me. All I need is somebody to help cover. And here's the thing, like they within the tax credit space, they have these, 0% interest forgivable loans. Like they have so many different funding mechanisms that you can use because, let's say we get rid of TIFs like they're doing. And, so let's look at it and say, okay, how can we give CIC or a CDFI or something of that nature a resource for them to create a mezzanine debt that they can put onto the product or put onto the loan that as long as I maintain my responsible actions towards the building, I operate it, I keep it affordable. After 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, this will fall off, right? But if I transact the building, then I have to repay it. There's things that you can do where you can kind of hedge for the scammers, right? The people who are going to come in and try to get this and then turn around and sell the building. Their position is only 60 a door.
You said exactly. It's making the end goal or the end satisfactory point to be long term. Scammers are never, and those guys are trying to work the system. They can never make it that long, and they'll shy away from that anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So I think with the proper discussion and with the right people, there's a way to build something that makes sense that could be used. Because I think the biggest thing with the TIFs was you just couldn't. It just wasn't broad enough, and you couldn't use it really where it was needed. So we need something that'll impact citywide, and I think if we can prove it, it'll be statewide. It'll reach across the country. And we'll be able to actually create the amount of residential units that we need in order to have stable housing for everybody in the city. And what that'll in turn will do is it's going to bring prices down, right? Because once you open up the development for the creation of density and things like that, you're going to have options for people. So they're not going to be forced to pay 20% above market. They're not going to be forced to pay because they're going to have, you want to charge that. I'm going to go next door to this newly developed unit, and I'm going to pay them 20%, 30% less. So now you're going to force to bring your rent down if you want to get anybody to rent your unit,
See, I always thought about it this way. SBA, the banks and lenders are so willing to take FHA and are willing to hand out FHA and SBA loans, but it's because someone else is sharing that risk. So if the banks we're able to, give that construction loan at a much lower percent, help fund, maybe a huge down payment at a smaller percent, tie all these restrictions that you're going to be stuck with no matter what.
Yeah.
But the city's got to guarantee that for the local bank or guarantee it for CIC. Then man, like that just takes that pulls everything out, all that other bloat and all the other process and all that stuff out. Just because they just need to make sure someone's going to pay that back one day, and if not, the city's got your back. Which a lot more of those will get pushed through and get done, versus all the other money that gets spent on, call it overhead, and just use the word bloat, I guess, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, we got deep here. Nice work, guys. Solving some problems.
Well, the thing is, these conversations keep coming back to the affordable piece.
Yeah.
Either that or we just keep talking to the same people. I don't know. But it
No,
keeps
it's a
coming
real
back to that.
issue.
Like,
It's a real issue.
But it keeps coming back to us. So I'm saying that's the problem we have. And if there's people out there that know how to solve this or have the impact, or, I almost feel you're never going to be able to go and rebuild what we're saying. Like, all you got to do is play. You have to have something out of left field just come and reproduce a new way of doing it, where all of a sudden the people you wouldn't be applying over here, you'd be applying your resources and your networking over here to do this. Like, it's like someone just has to come out from left field and build this out somehow.
I mean, and I think also to that same thing, it's like, I don't know that we want to build back the same, right? Like, I think that looking at where we are.
This doesn't work.
Right. Like we see where that gets us, right? So I think we kind of be insane to try to build back how it was.
You can't
I think
even tweak it. You just can't even tweak it. Like, it's just too difficult.
I mean, it is. So, I mean, I think, we get some new ideas. We bring the young guys up, let them see what they're telling us. You start to incorporate technology into things and, see where we get. But I mean, we definitely need better policy. We definitely need policy that's going to allow for the actual creation of affordable housing, right? And efficiently created affordable housing. I mean, I wanted, I do think, like, I'm really interested to see, I know the mayor's group just came out with the missing middle class stuff that they're doing out in North Lawndale. So I am really interested to see, because they are doing $150,000 per unit forgiveness on those units to help kind of deal with the affordability of it. And so that's through the Department of Planning. And Sierra Boatwright is an absolute beast. So, I think that there's going to be a lot of positive things that come from that. But
I mean, her back on.
She was like episode 20. We had her early. She was at CIC. We talked about Pullman.
Yeah, Sierra's a dog, man. And so I really like seeing what.
Go ahead and make that intro for us. We'll take that.
I reached out to her a couple times, but I didn't get.
Well, I mean, now I think it'd probably be pretty hard, but so I mean, we gripe about the mayor, but I mean, not everything is all terrible what that he's doing and what his administration is doing. So I'm really interested in seeing how that works out. My homegirl Bonita is working in that program, and so. I want to see if that actually comes to fruition the way that they wanted to, because I do think that there's elements of that, right? Because if they can create that and they can forgive $150,000 a units for those to be sold and things like that, you would think that there's something else that can be done in the buy and hold space for 20, 25, 30 unit buildings.
Yeah.
Plus Bonita's chops too. Like, I've been trying to get her on here as well. So
who's that?
Bonita.
Oh yeah, Bonita. Yeah, man. Look, you want to get something? She's a heavy hitter, man. Bonita is a great one. I think that's possible. You guys can get Bonita on here.
So, all right, ready to wrap?
Yep. All right. What's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do all this?
I mean, just grit, man. At this point, I think unfortunately, I was able to build a strong team. I have a support of my family, and then a lot of support of people who have done it before me.
Yep. What's the one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property here in Chicago?
Be patient, right? I know the feeling of investment is exciting. Wanting to hurry up and get to your future is exciting. Be patient. Stick to your guns. Let your pro forma dictate to you what's a good deal and what's not. And really make sure that what you're buying is what you're getting.
What do you do for fun?
Actually, I'm getting ready to start. So I'm the head volleyball coach at Timothy Christian for the boys volleyball team. We're doing tryouts on Monday, and our season's starting up. And I mean, I just absolutely love it.
That's awesome.
We had our connection with Pat McLaughlin, #Cabinets.
My man.
Yeah.
Man, me and Pat used to play together. That's my man.
His original episode we posted, and one of my buddies like, Corey? I was like, what? You know Corey?
Yeah. In fact, he played down at Illinois on their club team, and when I came back to Chicago, I got introduced to them, and I played with them for years. I mean, phenomenal guy, phenomenal. That program, the Illinois club program, has been phenomenal for years. So yeah,
there you
definitely
go.
Big shout out to McLaughlin.
All right, good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend to our listeners?
Straight Up Chicago podcast, baby. What you talking about?
Yeah.
Come on now, Straight Up Chicago investor, baby. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like this,
We toss the softballs.
I mean, but here, I mean, you go through all different things. You got real people on here telling real stories, talking about real problems and real solutions. And I mean, that's really what you want. You know, there's so much. We talk about a bloat. Like you go to YouTube, you got all these real estate gurus, and they're selling these dreams and things like that. Like, don't do that. You know. This is a proven podcast. This is a proven group of developers, and like, come here, sit here. I guarantee you, you guys have been doing this now for how long?
5 years.
If you can't find what you need here, then you're not looking. I mean, it's like what Vin Diesel said, right, in Fast and Furious. If you can't find the tool that you need in this garage, you don't need to be working on cars. And that's kind of thing. If you can't find what you need here in these podcasts, you don't need to be doing real estate.
All right.
New T-shirt.
All right. Other than yourself, name a valuable resource for other Chicago real estate investors.
The NBOA. All right. The Neighborhood Building Owners Alliance, I think, is an extremely valuable resource for Chicago owners. You know, they are in the forefront of fighting for housing policy on behalf of small to medium sized housing providers. And so if you can connect with anybody from there, you're doing great work.
All right, good deal. Corey, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value. How can our listeners learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my link, I got LinkedIn, I got Facebook. I tried to be social media active. I'm not very good at it. But you know, reach out. Let me be of service to you.
All right. Chicago Fact. Who we playing for? Who's sponsoring?
All right. Today's sponsor, Bebeck Das Law. You know, anything around real estate you need, Bebeck can help you. We're playing for Montez Cooper, who left us a review on iTunes. So Montez, if me or Corey gets this question right, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by Bebeck.
Oh, no.
Awesome. Thank you.
Montez, I'm sorry.
Montez, thank you for the review. All right. We'll go North Lawndale here. 3 of these 4 folks have ties to the North Lawndale, which does not.
Oh, gosh.
And your options are Kevin Garnett, Harold Ramis, Twista, Chance the Rapper. Which one does not have a connection to North Lawndale?
Well, see, Kevin was what? Proviso?
Yeah.
Farragut.
Yeah, Farragut. Yeah. Twist is West Side for sure. Chance is South Side.
I would say Chance. That's what I was saying. That's what I would say. But you got to take someone different just in case.
So what were the
Who's the third
options
one?
again?
So Harold Ramis was the one we didn't.
Harold Ramis.
I don't know who that is.
I'm not.
Caddyshack director Egon from Ghostbusters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's all I had to say.
Oh man.
I know how your mind works. That's hilarious.
I feel like because I want that one to not be it, that is probably going to be it. So, I'm gonna go with I'll go Harold Ramis. Yeah.
You guys got it. Chance the Rapper.
right.
And I was gonna text you this morning. Make sure it's we did B-Back. We did the other layer. We should have Chance from Lavelle Law. I was gonna give you the tip. Like,
All right. That's
nice
awesome.
job, guys. That was good deductive reasoning there.
There we go.
All right. Montez, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by Bebeck. So nice job, Corey. Thanks for coming on.
Congratulations.
Tom, thank you. Listeners, if you're listening to this right now, give us a quick 5-star review. You can get your name dropped in here for the Chicago Fact. If you're watching us, subscribe and leave a comment. You can also get your name dropped in the hat for the Chicago Fact. So thank you, Corey. Thank you, Tom. Listeners, we'll see you next week.